So hi and welcome everyone. Hope you can hear me well since acoustics in this hall is challenging, but I will try to speak a little bit louder. So what I'm going to talk about today basically is why we need a universal operating system for robots. And the first question, and therefore I need a little bit of participation here, is who of you actually knows those kinds of requests? So hands up of those people who are receiving those kinds of requests regularly. So I guess many of us do. And actually me being in the role of a CEO of a company, I receive those kinds of requests more often. Like many of them, and this is just a small snippet. The thing is, from those of you who know what I'm talking about, how many of those requests actually had words like robotics, motion control, PLC programming, support and automation? How many of them do you know who are actually offering services, not for app development, not for AI, not for web development, but really for what we all need as capabilities, which is pretty much related to robotics? Yeah, not too many. And the thing is, if we look at how global software development is basically structured, we're talking about approximately 27 million developers worldwide. The challenge for us is that statistically speaking, only one developer out of 525 is able actually to help us when it comes to robotics. In consequence, we have 524 developers building basically something else and changing the world with imagination, creativity, and all of their capabilities not in the direction of robotics, but everything we know we have on our smartphones, we use on our web browsers, etc., etc. So really the question here is, why is it so hard? So why do we only have so few developers on this planet actually shipping solutions and building software, building solutions in the automation space? And if we look at how automation projects today are basically structured, is that we have a large number of system integration companies, really bright people that are engineers by its heart. They look at customer manufacturing problems, and then they choose from a wide range of boxes, right? So depending on a specific industry area, they decide for a specific robot model, then you decide for end effectors, for sensors, you have to interact with a PLC system, and nowadays also we talk about integration in more cloud-based systems, but also the application plays a significant role. The problem is, even if we speak about robotic products, so I don't speak about integration of robots for manufacturing in cells, but really building products on top of robotics, like kitchen robots, we are basically facing the same challenge. And if we look at the whole landscape of solutions and technology spaces out there, we come up with a quite large number of possibilities. So if we only look at the top 20 relevant robot manufacturers, if we only look at the top 50 relevant tool makers, the top 100 sensor makers, and then maybe also take into account the top 10 relevant PLC makers with the different industry protocols we're talking about, we easily end up with a little bit more than 10 million different options, and this is not hypothetical, this is reality. So what I want you to do is go through a little bit of exercise with me. Is let's compare it to something we all know quite well, which is basically tech or PC industry, right? So humanity started basically early with first PCs, so Konrad Zuse, basically built in Germany. Then we went over a phase of really large, giant computers with mainframes shipped from IBM to the PC era, and now we have all sorts of devices available. We wear on our hands, in our pockets, on our desks. So let's have a look at the number of installations just on PCs over the course of the last decades. And today we are at about roughly 1.8 billion PCs deployed globally. And if you look at this chart, so I was wondering, actually, what happened, so what led to this extreme growth? So what was the reason why basically the number of PCs on this planet exploded dramatically? And the thing that happened basically, and one of the key drivers back at this time was basically Windows. So what Microsoft did with Windows was basically making PCs available to everyone, and then PCs basically stepped out from a niche product, which was mainly used by military research and some geeks, into something everyone could use on this planet. So let's compare it a little bit to robotics, right? So robotics started roughly about the same time. Then we had the first robots in the US at Ford, and then basically technology evolved, and today we are at the phase where we have a broad range of different robot types. You just look around this hall and you see a good examples of them, and today really complex processes can be done with that. So let's have a look at the total number of robots being available or deployed and installed on this planet. And if you barely look at this chart, we can say, okay, we have a good, stable growth. The market is getting bigger over time. The issue I have with that is if we overlay both charts, right? So this is the global number of PCs compared to the global number of robots we have today. And basically, there are not too many robots, right? So even though you read about robots conquering this planet, taking away of all of our jobs, and being involved in almost every aspect of our daily lives, reality is that, right? Almost a flat line. So let's have a look at how Microsoft basically changed PC industry and how they democratized the PCs. And first thing they did was, they didn't invent this, but they brought it to the masses, was providing an easy-to-use user interface, right? So window icon menu pointer as the metaphor, desktop as the whole frame for that, the mouse as an input device. Basically, they lowered the barrier of entry for people operating such a machine. This is number one. Number two is they have established a pretty stable, nowadays stable driver system. So they took away the burden of hardware heterogeneity. Today, if you use a printer, you don't care too much whether this printer comes from Epson or Canon. You have plug and play, you have a standardized printing dialog, and all the magic happens basically in the drivers. And one of the mostly forgotten ingredients was the development tools to equip all of those creative, well-trained, and eager people around this planet to build applications on top of that. So, still, what can we learn from that? How can we move away from a flat line? And then, often when I speak to people in the robotics industry, I get the counter argument that, all right, PCs are mainly also, the growth of PCs was driven by B2C, and robots are still like manufacturing product you use mostly in low mix, high volume productions. And there is not really a market for robots in this consumer space. And I would counter argument that this is not really the case, right? In every science fiction movie we see, and also with the feedback people are receiving from deploying robotics in hospitals, in homes, in elderly care, there is actually the potential for robots being deployed as we knew it from PCs, right? There is definitely the potential from having a robot in every household, multiple robots in every hospital. What we all must understand is that the companies actually building those products, they were not necessarily founded yet, right? So this is basically the creativity of the people out there which haven't started yet. And then there's always the question that, how do we start? People are saying the market is not there yet, but the market will not basically be just come out of nothing. It must be created. I think one example of that on how this will change in the next 10 to 20 years is Project NEOM. I don't know if some of you have heard about that. It's a project driven by Saudi Arabia, and they are building basically a planned city. And one of the drivers of that made a statement that in that city, most likely there will be more robots than people. And basically the goal is that every commodity job in that city shall be automated by robots somehow. So there is a market potentially there, and no one's currently striving for that. So still, we're at this point where we're talking about this flat line. And when we speak from Wandelbots to robot manufacturer, hardware-driven companies, I always feel that there is the fear of the people basically building the hardware, that they will lose business when we have a platform available. And I think it's a good idea to look back and ask companies like Intel, like Dell, right, like IBM, how they felt about Windows being available back in the 90s, right? So I think they have made quite a good stock progress during that phase. So, and I'm not saying, so you can do some research, but that's the stock development of a large robotics company over the course of the last 15 years. So in terms of rapid growth, at least there is some potential. And when we entered the market and basically started with our company, what we are seeing in the industry, and especially when we early talk to most of the robot manufacturers, I'm not speaking of all of them, but with most of them, I see the same thing as we see with other domains like IoT. Everyone's trying to build their own ecosystem, their own platform. And the problem with that is that if everyone's building their own platform, there's not a platform at all. There are small ecosystems, and still we are not getting around the problems we are seeing. So what I want to say is that instead of fighting for a piece of this cookie we have today, we should all work together to make it the big, giant cake. And then we should make sure that everyone gets a proper piece out of that. But the way forward is not trying to basically capture a little bit of market share in the market we see today. There is, and this is the message for today, is that there is the high chance that we can make this whole market significantly bigger and create a peak out of this flat line. And how do we do that? I truly believe that if we enable the rest, so these other 26.8 million developers out there, to have easy access in robotics, to just start building stuff. Instead of building the next app, building a cool solution in robotics, giving them the chance to use state-of-the-art programming languages, state-of-the-art tools, giving them the chance to basically easily bring in their creativity to the robotics industry will significantly change the range of solutions, the price of solutions, and this will finally basically also democratize robotics. So instead of having individual solutions which are one variant out of 10 million possible, and basically dealing with the integration of a mix of tens of thousands of different technologies, it's worthwhile thinking how we can build a uniform platform, uniform models, a uniform motion concept, how we can build libraries, SDKs, how we can build development tools, really modern development tools with the entire stack you need to have integrated, rather than basically trying to build walls and use separation as a concept or basically as a market driver. And of course, when you speak about building an operating system, building a platform, building a middleware, connecting it to the cloud, blah, 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 people easily put you in a bucket where you just like talking nonsense or buzzwords. I think that's really possible. And ROS, the robot operating system, was a very good first attempt to build this out of the community. Me, myself, back in my research days, I worked heavily over a long period of time also as a ROS contributor, and we used ROS a lot. And actually, our company, Wandelbots, was founded because we saw that there were some initial fundamental drawbacks which couldn't be overcome with the way how the platform was built. And I'm not saying that it must necessarily be Wandelbots building this platform. Of course, we are trying hard to do that, and we had a good start, and we have a proper way of doing that. But this will only happen if people start understanding that there is a tremendous potential in growth of the overall market. We can actually be the people bringing this to the industry. And the last question is, why now? Right, so the thing is, we should have done this also in the 90s, but I don't want to look back too much, so it's never too late. I think we are now facing with a modern generation of robots with easier interaction techniques, with a higher acceptance in the whole society, with a better understanding of the technology. There is really the chance to make this impact right now. And there is this potential of doing that. But what's the missing link is, again, opening up the technology to other developers, opening up this whole space and making it easier to use so other people can contribute. And why here? I think we in Europe, we have a unique skill set of things we can build. So automation or robots were maybe invented and first used in the US. They are now mainly built and driven in companies in Japan. But here in Europe, we are the people that are the experts in bringing robots into applications, in programming them. Here is all the knowledge. And actually, we have quite a huge number of really good programmers. And now with the Industrial Revolution, call it as you wish, there is this unique chance of bringing in all of our knowledge we have from engineering and manufacturing robot cells to really opening everything up so we can be the ones building the ecosystems where all the developers in the US and China and Japan are building on top of. So when, in 10 years from now, I would like to get hundreds of requests looking like this. And if that's reality, then we all made a good job together. So I want to thank you for your attention. And as a request for everyone, start building and basically open up to make the cake bigger. And also, I'm extremely excited that my grandfather will speak afterwards. So have a great rest of the day. Bye.